Hello everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here, back with another video, trying to get back on that wagon of daily videos, and I highly doubt that I'm gonna manage not to fall off again, but all you can do is get back on and get back to it, right? So in any event, yesterday we talked a good bit about the art book and how there may have been some hints of what is to come in the later Total War Warhammer 3 content, most notably with some units and monsters that had not been mentioned until we saw in that book with the Chimera and such. However, there has also been some other little bits and pieces that have been discovered by people in the community who are, of course, very, very passionate and looking for anything and everything that may signal at some future content. And one of these places was that one of the artists, Jim Russell, published a number of works, I believe, that he was working on, showing off his artwork for Total War Warhammer 3, and we actually find some things that did not make it into the base game. Now, whether this was because they created this content and some of it had to be cut and it ended up on the cutting room floor, that's certainly possible, and is probably likely, to be honest, especially since the game was delayed, and even in the state it came out in, I think most of us would agree that the game should have been delayed more. Patch 1.1 feels like the actual release of the base game, with everything that it really should have had at launch, and it's like, yes, this game feels like it's in a good place. It's working on pretty much everybody's computers now, not necessarily everyone's, but the vast majority of the community. Mods are enabled, so like the core experience is there, and so it's very likely that because the game was delayed, and even when it came out it still had a significant amount of issues, that there were a number of things that due to time did not make it into the base game, and we're going to take a look at some of those things. Now there are a couple of pieces here that are absolutely gorgeous and just fun to look at. So here we've got a landscape and mood piece for the Realm of Tzeentch, which is just absolutely gorgeous. And I think the Realm of Tzeentch did an excellent job of capturing this. Here we've got the Realm of Slaanesh, which is absolutely amazing. Like, damn, Jim Russell, these mood pieces are something. Here we've got the campaign portal or picture for the Realm of Nurgle, which has literally everything that we have on Nurgle's Realm. I think the only thing that's not on Nurgle's Realm is the Bridge of Fools, which back here looked to almost be like something connecting us to a different Chaos Realm. If it looks like it might connect to Khorne's Realm, and you can see here there's actual bridge to the Realm of Slaanesh. The Bridge of Fools looks like it bridges to the Realm of Khorne. And then back here you could see it looks like Khorne and Tzeentch's realms are bridged. So there may have originally been a way to walk around between the various realms, who knows, but obviously this is just a concept art stage. But it's gross and beautiful to look at, but I just wanted to really appreciate his art before we got to some of the really juicy stuff. Here we can see the campaign preview for the Ogre Kingdoms. Unfortunately, this image, I wish so badly that I could actually read the text, because when I zoom in, the text gets, like, I can kind of make it out, but it's very difficult to read. And I would love to just read all the little tidbits of information. This is the kind of stuff that I really wish they would release to us, the fans. Like, I would love to just get a book full of all of the concept art for all of the different zones and just everything. The art of the games is great, but it only has like 5 to 6 pages per faction, and we know there's so much more than that. And this, like, stuff like this where it's got all the information and details, I would kill for this. But we do see some interesting stuff on here. Of course, there's the just very obvious mention of the Chaos Dwarf lands here by the River Ruin, and you can see how like gross and industrial the river looks because it's got all the chemicals being dumped into it up here by Zarnagrund. But there's all sorts of notes and little bits and pieces, like you can see the mention of the Dwarven realms and how most of them have fallen. You got the dwarf statues, but like, oh man, look at the sky castles. Over here you could see them up in there are these just giant towers and buildings on the very tip tops of these mountains, and they're just so gorgeous to look at. I absolutely love the last Sky Castle and the Sky Titan Castle ruins. They just invoke such wonderful little bits of imagery. And then of course you got things like the Maw Gate. The Great Maw looks fantastic. You've got examples of like a tribe's Maw Pit. It's just a wonderful looking map with a lot of beauty and really interesting things to read and check out. I love that Blood Peak looks like it literally has blood pouring out of all of the holes in the mountain, which it very well might. The Valley of Fangs, the Fire Mouth, which we actually got in game. It looks fantastic and beautiful, but man, just absolutely incredible. But this map is where things get interesting. So this map shows us, you'll notice, the entirety of Cathay. So this is a 3D render. This is a campaign preview aerial view of Grand Cathay. And you'll notice while some areas have been grayed out to represent, you know, Fog of War, and that they're not really relevant to what we're going to be talking about, the parts that are like actually fully like worked on and rendered in is the entirety of Cathay. So down here we have all these watchtowers that leads to the land of Koresh. Here we've got the Mountains of Heaven, which separates us from the Kingdoms of End. Then over here you got the Mountains of Morn, the Great Maw, and then you just have all this like amazing information, and we have the entirety of Cathay. We got the Jade Sea. You can see Nippon's mentioned over here, and we've got the cities of Fuchao, Lizhu, Shiwu, the plains of Shen, Beishai, Shimai, which I apologize if I'm butchering any of these pronunciations. We have the Celestial Lake here in the center, and you know, in Total War Warhammer 3 we only got, like, you could cut it off right around the center. We've almost got about half of Cathay in the final game, but like we're missing like this amazing giant arch thing over here, which just looks, it's called the Great Arch of Heaven, and it's like this huge, I don't even know what it is, some kind of geographical thing that is just, I mean, that thing must be miles and miles long. It's insane looking. So this is obviously a beautiful image and shows that they may have intended originally to give us the entirety of Cathay, but maybe some of it was cut out due to time, or it could be that they developed all of Cathay because they know they would probably want to include all of Cathay in Mortal Empires, but then, you know, the Realm of Chaos map ended up only using some of this information even though they developed all of it. And you may say, oh, maybe this is just super basic, but that's what this image is for. So this image is a bird's eye view of Grand Cathay, or the plan view. And here we not only get to see the entirety of Grand Cathay, but we also have the borders splitting up the different areas in Cathay. And we also have a bunch of information here along the side describing all of these areas and important things about them. And we're going to go over all of this information because this is amazing. And it can give us a lot of hints about what may be to come. And I am super, super excited to see this developed. So we're just going to start at the top left and work our way down. So the first thing that we have drawn off on the map here, and it's not even included really in any of these zones, is the city of Nan Gao, which you could see compared to every other city on the map. Nan Gao is monstrous. I mean, this city is huge. This easily is one of the biggest cities in the entire world. So we have the largest city in the north. Nan Gao is heavily fortified with 9 concentric walls ringing the city, each supporting the last wall with fiendishly designed killing grounds. Which, can I just say, how insane would it be if that was actually the siege map, where instead of having one wall, Nan Gao had 9 walls that you have to fight your way through, like you're playing Attack on Titan and you're just trying to get through all the damn walls. I would, oh man, that would, I don't ever foresee them doing it because it would be such a unique map for only a single city, but I'm sure modders could do it. But like a city where you had to fight through 9 walls, that would be crazy. I feel like that would almost be more like a survival battle, where you're just trying to like slowly but surely push through each of the individual walls. But I love the imagery of the city, and I really hope we get some like good concept art and lore about the city itself once Warhammer the Old World begins, and we're really like dealing with like the invasion of Cathay and stuff like that. but you can see that it kind of seems like Nan Gao may actually be exposed. Like the Great Wall does not go, the Great Bastion, Grand Bastion does not actually go all the way to Nan Gao. It only goes most of the way, and then it looks like Nan Gao actually has to defend itself a little bit. I think that's probably an issue or a design flaw with this map. I do believe that Nan Gao is actually fully protected by mountains or something from the Chaos Wastes, but it does have a very crazy appearance. Oh no, it actually flat out says borders the eastern steppes and the mountains of Morn. So yeah, it looks like it actually does have roads leading to it and is not protected by the Great Bastion. That is crazy, and also would explain why it needs to be so insanely deeply well protected. Oh god, I kind of wish we had it like that in game. Like that is such a cool idea, that there's a city that's so mighty it doesn't even need the Great Bastion to protect it, because it just has so many walls and so many defenses. Known as the City of Smoke, home to countless forges and artificer workshops, craftsmen and inventors fashion war machines for the Great Bastion and the armies of the Empire. When they say the Empire, they mean the Empire of Cathay, not the Empire, just to be clear. Its wealth and power gives it some autonomy from Weijin, and the lords of Nan Gao are the rulers of the north, and Nan Gao has never been sacked. This looks amazing. I would love to see it kind of get a little bit more focus, maybe in Mortal Empires, to really make Nan Gao feel this incredible and unique. Right now it's just kind of there. I don't even remember if Nan Gao has a unique building in it, like a landmark building. But if I would love to see CA give a little more love and attention to Nan Gao. Moving on, the Great Bastion. The walls of the Great Bastion are lined with massive grand cannons shaped like roaring dragons, each one able to belch fire or spit cannonballs. The fortress towers of the wall look like war galleons, with sides brimming with row upon row of cannons. Commanded by the Storm Dragon, defends against the Chaos Wastes, a wonder of engineering and sorcery. Do not reference the Great Wall. We know what it's based on. Don't accidentally say that. Raised in minus 1800 Imperial calendar, so 1800 years before the creation of the Empire. 1,000 soldiers for every mile of its length. Populated with war machines from the forges of Nan Gao, defended by wizards from the Celestial Court. It is considered a great honor to serve on the Bastion, and it is reinforced by the magic of the Celestial Dragon. I will say that as much as I love the siege maps for the Great Bastion, which I actually do, I do enjoy their siege maps because they're a very specific, you can only attack from one direction design. I do kind of wish we had that as like abilities. So you know how there are certain maps and places in the world where like for instance, you're playing with the Vampire Coast, right? And the Vampire Coast have those abilities that represent their ships shooting onto the battlefield, or the Black Ark has the bombardment abilities. I wish the gates, the Great Bastion, had that as well, to represent how the people on the very tippy top of the wall and in those galleon shaped towers were opening fire and just like blasting the hell out of attackers as they are attacking those smaller the three gates, the Snake Gate, the Dragon Gate, and the Turtle Gate. I would really love to see, because I really think that while the Great Bastion feels pretty good right now, it doesn't feel amazing, right? It doesn't feel like, oh man, attacking this is impossible. And I really feel like it needs to be tuned up so that it does feel kind of impossible. Like if you're attacking the Great Bastion with anything less than 2 full 20 stacks, I feel like it should be borderline impossible. To really give it that feel of, man, no wonder Chaos hasn't been able to crack this in generations, you know? So maybe if we could get, like, I would say at minimum, make it where the Great Bastion does not suffer attrition, because it's like, it's been designed to be sieged, and when you're laying siege to it, you're not surrounding it, you're only laying siege to one side of it. So it should be immune to attrition damage, and then it should also be able to it should have those army abilities, so that when they actually fight, they should have abilities that represent all of those cannons back on the wall bombarding the hell out of attackers. I think that is a must and would just be super duper fun. Here we've got the Northern Provinces, ruled by the Storm Dragon, home of the Great Bastion. Its people live in the shadow of the Great Bastion, borders the eastern steppes, benefits from the wealth of Nan Gao, frontline on the war against Chaos, contributes the most soldiers to the army. And we could see here the borders of the northern provinces. So the northern provinces is kind of this big V or this big triangle looking shape. And it looks like it's cut by the here you can see it's cut. It basically goes around the borders of the Warpstone Desert, stops at the Shrine of the Alchemist, and goes to the source of this river that leads the River Chang, it looks like. And then it follows the River Chang down to the city of Qingpo, which looks like the Qingpo looks like it's super important because it literally is representing kind of like a border between all these different places. And then it goes up along this line until it eventually draws over to near to where the Great Bastion begins. Then we have the Western Provinces. So ruled by the Iron Dragon, our boy, the harshest region in Cathay, which mainly because it borders the Warpstone Desert and the Great Maw. And we got the Warpstone Desert on the north side and the Great Maw on the south side, next to the ruins of Shinwu, which I would guess that Shinwu was a lovely city until it accidentally got nuked alongside everybody else when the Great Maw fell. Or perhaps it was a city that was what I guess what would have happened to it. We could see it. There's no greenery. It's literally just this hideous desert. Like, most of it is a wasteland that I imagine grows basically nothing, and it's probably very harsh living. It's got an area known as the Baleful Hills. Just not pleasant. And then we note that it is the gateway to the west thanks to the Ivory Road. So of course, despite the fact they have very few natural resources in regards to like food and stuff like that, Shenyang and the Tower of Sher are able to get immense amounts of resources because they have the Ivory Road right here. So anyone from the west that's coming to the east, unless they want to brave the eastern steppes, which is literally suicide, you're gonna have to come through here, and they're gonna be able to get their hands on all those goods, so they're able to produce a lot of money, which makes it a valuable land. But most importantly, the Iron Dragon uses the strange materials of the Warpstone Desert to create unique weapons. So we know that our dragon boy Zhao Ming is really big on, he's an alchemist, but he's also like a forge master. So he is a genius when it comes to creating and empowering weapons and armor and stuff. And he even tinkers around with creating new kinds of weapons. Now, while war machines and weapons of engineering seem to fall much more under Nan Gao, therefore they fall under the power of Miao Ying, even though the city of Nan Gao doesn't necessarily seem to like Miao Ying that much. Zhao Ming is able to be like the best of the best, and of course is the Lord of the Alchemists, because he's got the Shrine of Alchemists out here. He allows metal wizards to hang out with him, even though it's not allowed by the edicts of the Emperor. Like, according to the edicts of the Emperor, the only kind of magic allowed in Grand Cathay is very explicitly the astromancers. That's why when it talks about with the Great Bastion, it says that the wizards from the Celestial Court are along it. There's not really supposed to be any metal wizards along it, because they're not allowed within the edicts. But everyone kind of is turning a blind eye right now to Zhao Ming, because it hasn't caused any major issues yet. And of course, his mother, who is the one that handles a lot of like the information in the Empire, likes him the most and seems to be letting him get away with this, much to the chagrin of the Jade Dragon. But utilizing the Warpstone Desert, he's been creating really powerful and devastating weaponry. But as we all know, while Warpstone is incredibly powerful and is used to make some of the most powerful weapons, machines, and armor in the world, it can come at a steep price, being that Warpstone is just solidified dark magic. So it not only can cause mutations, it can cause madness and insanity due to exposure. Now, it seems that Zhao Ming is aware of this, and he goes to great lengths in order to protect himself and his people from it. And he seems to be using Warpstone responsibly, using its magical abilities in order to augment the weapon creating process without relying on it in the weapons to the extent that the Skaven do, where while it makes the weapon more deadly, it's also just as harmful to the user as it is to the enemy. Zhao Ming seems to be much more careful than that. However, I do think that this majorly plays into his whole storyline of insanity, where we know that Zhao Ming can hear the voice of the Great Maw in his head. He can hear the Great Maw talking to him, which isn't a hallucination. Like, the Great Maw is a god. It does have the ability to influence or exert its influence on the world. And I think due to his constant proximity to the Great Maw, as well as his constant use of and exposure to Warpstone, Zhao Ming is starting to go insane. Now, granted, he seems to be at the very beginning of this insanity arc, but it is very worth noting that his siblings' worry about him being close to the Great Maw is not unfounded. And I do think that if we were ever to see Cathay really get a lot of focus once Warhammer the Old World relaunches and we start getting Black Library books or army books about Cathay, I would expect that we might get to see some really cool stories about Zhao Ming and how he's being very subtly but slowly changed due to these decisions that he's making. Because while being a dragon, he's probably very, very resistant to these changes, it's still happening to him because no matter how careful you are, the sheer amount of stuff that he's dealing with in this situation, it's going to have effects. But yeah, anyway, here we can see the borders of the Western provinces. And what's interesting is that he doesn't just control the wastelands. We also see that Zhao Ming in his territory actually has the city of monkeys, which the city of monkeys does seem to be very heavily implied to be where the monkey warriors hang out. So we see here, these are the mountains of heaven down here along this border. So the mountains of heaven primarily border southern Cathay, but they do also kind of have this exchange here with the ancient giant lands, which then go into the mountains of Morn. So it seems that for whatever reason, that a good number of the monkeys from the mountains of heaven have formed enough of a community that they live in this city of monkeys. And then we have Hamu Port, which Hamu Port is probably one of the most important things here in the Western provinces, because I would bet that what the system is that traders, people that take the Ivory Road, arrive at the Tower of Asher, where all of their goods and everything are exchanged. Then it is taken to the capital of Shenyang, and from there they take this major road, and then they either, I would imagine, would branch off here and go to through the ruins of Shinwu into the city of monkeys, and then that would take them to Hamu Port, which then they are able to take the river, and the river would take them all the way into all this craziness in the center. So I would imagine that is a hugely important trade route, unless you want to take the longer trade route of going from Shenyang all the way down to Shengwu, and then from there you would take the river. But I'm really, really curious once we start getting, not in a Total War sense, but just from a lore sense, what will be the most important trade routes for taking all the goods, the massive amount of goods and wealth and all that coming from the Empire and Talea and just the old world in general, how it spreads into the Empire proper, whether they take it south and go to like Hamu Port and Shengwu, or whether they even maybe take it north into Nan Gao and such. But fascinating map. Moving on, now we have genuinely brand new stuff. Things that I've heard about when speaking with Andy Hall, and we've talked about a little bit on Lorebeards, but this comes with just a ton of really, really cool information on this map. First of all, being the central provinces. So here, the central provinces we can see are drawn between, so here's the western provinces. So the central provinces start at Xingpo, and then they go all the way south to Shengwu, and then they go east through this whatever this thing is called, the something to heaven, and then they go down through the Nanshang Basin all the way through all these forests and hills. So we could see that central Cathay is, you know, obviously very central, and it's very happily like tucked in to all of this just absolutely beautiful scenery and safety. Like, it is, there's no enemies anywhere near it. It doesn't even go all the way north. This is actually a separate, once you cross this river, that Xingpo is so near and Zanshi is along, this is actually a totally different province. So the central provinces is right smack in the center, and is where the Celestial Lake is located. And we can see there's all these beautiful cities that are located in this area. And we see that this is ruled by the Jade Dragon. This is where Yuan Bo is boss. It's also an area of verdant farmland, and we could see, I mean, look at all this greenery, and it's beautiful. There's no neighboring enemies. Yeah, I bet you could farm a ton here. At its center is a massive celestial lake. So here, this is the Celestial Lake, and probably one of the most important water features in the entire empire. And then we have the safest and most peaceful province. Makes sense. And this is the birthplace of the Celestial Dragon. So we know that Shenwu was born somewhere around here. I would guess, because this is called the Celestial Lake, that perhaps Shenwu was born somewhere in that ballpark. And we do know that I believe in Total War Warhammer 3, you could actually find something in near it. I think it's actually technically in the Imperial Provinces, but there's something around these lakes or this area where there is mention of the location where Shenwu was born. But he's lived his entire many thousands of years life around this area, and obviously grew to dominate a much larger area over time. But yeah, no wonder this area is like super sacred and peaceful and everything. Moving on to the southern provinces, which are probably the most war-filled next to only the northern provinces. So we know this is ruled by the fire dragon Li Dao, and it is a wilderness area with no great cities. And you'll notice that you can actually detect the cities on these maps, because you'll see all these little dots, or you'll see all these like concentric rings and stuff. So we look here on this, the entirety of the southern province, there's not a single great city. He does not control a single great city. Li Dao does not get any of the easy job. He just controls a vast wilderness. And the northern parts of it do have, he's got some nice rivers and some mountains, and there's some verdant grasslands and stuff over here. But he does have quite a few forests, especially around here. And I imagine it's pretty dense and heavy woodland. And then we notice that he's actually got a series of towers that guard the southern border against the Naga of Kresh, which I'm sure is deeply needed. But what else can they tell us? The people that live here are forest wardens and hunters. And the villages are hidden among that trackless woodland. So pretty much what we thought. So as we get over here into the more eastern areas of the southern provinces, it's just really dense, heavy woodlands. Forests don't seem to be very heavily indicated on this map. It looks like most of the green things are indicating like mountains and stuff. But so over here we know we have tons and tons and tons of forests, which makes sense because we start heading into the lands of Koresh, which are just jungles. It's literally just a continent-sized jungle. And then over here we've got kind of these a lot of wastes and more open areas, but the land is just full of hunters and people that specialize in taking down wild beasts and animals, and they live their lives being very careful to stay out of notice, out of attention. The Great River forms the northern border. So here we have the Great River, and we can see that, yes, indeed, it forms the entire border it literally is the border of the southern provinces. It determines the entirety of the southern province, except for this one little part where it looks like the western provinces drew a line, was like, nope, you don't get to follow the river anymore because Hamyu Port is ours. And then they mention right here at the end that the mountains of heaven dominate the horizon to the south. So we know that the mountains of heaven are absolutely colossal. The largest mountain range in the world, according to the old lore, was the ancient giant lands, but I imagine the mountains of heaven are a second close contender, or perhaps are maybe even larger. I believe the mountains of heaven are based on the Himalayas in our world, if I understand correctly. But we know this is where the Monkey King reigns supreme. His empire is right up in the mountains of heaven, and the Monkey King is a sometimes ally, sometimes foe of Grand Cathay. but has teamed up with Li Dao multiple times to fight against the Tigerman of End and the Naga of Koresh. And it seems that more often than not, he is an ally rather than an enemy, despite that whole incident where he tried to take over 200 years ago, which, to be honest, was probably someone tricking him, if I had to guess. But yeah, so that's the southern provinces. Then we go to the right side of the image, which pops us up to the Celestial City. So here we have the city in the clouds, and this is super interesting. So I thought the Celestial City was flying, but according to this image, it is not in fact actually flying, but instead the Celestial City is supported on top of a mountain reaching towards heaven in the center of Weijin. So you have the city of Weijin itself, and then at the center, at the center of Weijin, there is this terrifyingly huge mountain that looks like it's reaching for heaven, and on the top of that mountain is supported the Celestial City, which is where Big Daddy lives, and that's crazy. And super cool. And up there he has the Paradise Gardens, the Wuxing War Compass, the Celestial Court, and the Temple of the Two Moons. We don't have a ton of information about those particular locations. I believe a few of those are landmarks. Obviously we know what the Wuxing Compass is, and we'll talk more about it here. But you know, it's a ways up there, and we can see that Weijin is a large city. Weijin is a titanic city. Like Nan Gao relies on those walls, but we can guess that most of the city of Nan Gao is probably like in the center or around the last few rings. There's probably nothing, and nobody in their right mind living between the absolute outer walls and like probably looks like the first two or three. So like there's probably a big, because they're just killing grounds is what they say. So the city of Weijin, we can see here, is just colossal. Like it is huge and all spread out all over the place. And it even connects to the city of the Shukagon down here, which we know are the descendants of the dragons themselves, who have taken human companions. But so let's learn a little bit more about what's going on in the actual city. So we have the Wuxing Compass of Weijin. So this is a great magical device that has been set into the floor of the Celestial Palace itself. It charts the winds of magic, showing the Celestial Court which wind is in ascendance and from whence it is blowing. And using it, the Celestial Emperor is able to tell when magic will wax and wane within Cathay, which is huge. That's a very, very impressive piece of knowledge to have. That is such a feat of engineering and magical device creation. The Wuxing Compass, like that. I cannot express how insanely powerful it is in the Warhammer world to not only know which wind of magic is in ascendance, but where it is coming from and being able to tell when it will wax and wane. That is so much information that is critical to any empire. I don't care who you are. Having that kind of information is absolutely massive and would explain why Cathay is terrifyingly powerful. And of course, he's even able to direct the winds with it. And of course, we know he can do that by playing Total War Warhammer 3. The compass, we learn, is located in Weijin because this is actually where the winds of magic blow strongest. So it seems that when the winds of magic are pouring out of the north towards Cathay, for some reason, probably due to like the curvature of the earth or who knows what, the winds are naturally funneled through the city of Weijin, which is why the Celestial Dragon Emperor built the city there in the first place, is to take advantage of that and allow. That's why the compass is able to control the magic that is blowing through that area, because it seems that the vast majority of the magic that goes into Cathay itself must go through the city of Weijin, which allows the compass to therefore control it by grabbing massive quantities of it and directing it around. And then we note that through the Wuxing Compass, the Dragon Emperor is able to channel all of the Yang magic that he gathers into the Great Bastion, and all of the Yin magic into the Dragon River, which of course comes out of the other side of the city. Speaking of the Dragon River, we have the Dragon River, which is the natural border between Cathay and what lies beyond. And this has a special significance to the people. It is vast enough for massive war junks to sail from one end of Cathay to the other. So it's a big old river, and you know, even the largest ships can get around and cross it and such. And here we see, believed to guide the ancestors to the underworld. It's infused with yin magic, and the spirit dragon supposedly sleeps below the river. So we know there is no supposedly about it. It is 100% undeniable that the spirit dragon, which is the dragon of death, she is somewhere below the river, and she is asleep. She is slumbering. And from what lore we have about Cathay, from the Cathay tech tree to Cathay events to little notes and pieces, seems to indicate that the spirit dragon, the death dragon, she is slumbering at the absolute bottom of this river, and her dreams are the underworld of Cathay. It seems that when the people of Cathay die, their spirits, the essence of their souls, is directed through some magical means to the Dragon River, which leads them down to the spirit dragon, and they take form or find a form of afterlife within her dreams. And as she is dreaming with them all present in her dreams, they then have the ability through rituals and kind of the ancestor worship that is present in Cathay to manifest themselves within Cathay proper itself. So that's how we're able to see events like the ancestral dead of Cathay appearing on battlefields to fight alongside their descendants, or the people of Cathay performing specific rituals of respect or what have you in order to make contact with their ancestors, where they're able to like ask them questions or maybe just like get advice from them in times of need. We know that Cathay has this lore about their dead are not lost to them. Their spirits do not go to more mysterious afterlife. They seem to go to a very specific place where their souls remain intact, which that is exceedingly rare in the Warhammer Fantasy universe. Even Moor's Garden, the very gray, foggy afterlife where Moor takes the dead of the old world and they're supposed to go into eternal restfulness, you do not get to go there and stay intact. Your essence basically breaks apart and you will, you know, cease to be. You go into that eternal rest. You will cease. That does not happen in Cathay. Instead, you are preserved as a spirit, which is very, very peculiar. And it seems to be completely centered around and tied around the spirit dragon, and how she seems to be kind of this anchor that keeps all of the Cathayan dead alive within her dreams. And I suspect if she were ever to die or to wake up, that would cease to be, which will obviously be horrible. And a part of me can't help wonder if we know that the Dragon River is exceedingly dangerous, and that to sail across it in an attempt to invade Cathay is just suicide, because if you sail across it, the river can literally reach out and like, it has the ability to rip your souls out and drag it into the depths, which is why the Celestial Dragon Emperor is pumping the Spirit River constantly full of yin magic, because the yin magic is allowing the river to kill any enemies that try and cross it, and I suspect provides sustenance and protection for his daughter at the bottom of the river. Anyway, moving on. We have the city of Weijin itself, the capital city of Grand Cathay, perhaps the greatest city in the Warhammer world. I would certainly say it's up there. It does look rather large and does have a bunch of big dragons. The city itself is run by the Jade Dragon. So this seems to be where Yuan Bo sets up shop. It's not really clear if he lives here or if he lives in the Central Provinces. But what's interesting is that he actually has control of multiple places. We'll get to the Imperial Provinces in a moment, but Yuan Bo controls not only the Central Provinces, he also controls the city of Weijin, and by extension, he controls the Imperial Provinces. So he controls functionally 3 major aspects within Cathay. So while Miao Ying has the most important job by far, and kind of the job of the greatest honor, in the sense of like the eldest being trusted with the most significant task. She has to defend the Great Bastion, which is constantly under assault by the terrible power of the forces of chaos. But Yuan Bo seems to either be the true most favored, or at least the second most favored, because he controls the vast majority of Cathay between the Imperial Provinces, the Central Provinces, and the capital city of Weijin itself. So Yuan Bo has a massive amount of control. And we can understand that he really is kind of the administrator of all Grand Cathay. He wields a lot of the authority from his father especially, but I think from both of them, and really has a lot of control over everything going on. Further, this is of course what the Wuxing war compasses. And the city, interesting, is divided into two halves. So the city of Weijin is not simply one united city. It's actually two cities that share a border, and then of course have the celestial city above them. So if anything, it's kind of like three cities. And the cities are split into the city of the sun, which is, or the city of the emperor, and the city of the moon, or the city of the empress. It is situated at the confluence of the Dragon River and the furthest navigable point on the river. So I believe what they're saying by that is that this is the furthest inland you can go by navigating the Dragon River. And yeah, extends for miles in all directions. Yes, we can see that. It is very large. A central point reaches up towards heavens, which okay, so a central mountain reaches up towards heaven, which supports the celestial city. Yep. Which maybe the celestial city is actually flying. I can't tell when it says that it's supporting the celestial city if it means no, the city is not flying, it's actually attached to the mountain and the city's hanging off the mountain, or if it means that that point reaching towards the heavens is just very, very close to where the floating city is, and therefore that's where like all the goods and or everything that needs to go to the celestial city is taken, and that's how the two cities communicate, is through that point. I could have sworn Andy Hall told us that the city itself actually flies, in which case that mountain probably just acts very notably as like the connection point. Anyway, from there, we also note that the Great Bastion runs along the horizon north of the city. Yep. And then the key feature is, of course, the River of Souls, which is what allows passage to the underworld of Grand Cathay. One does wonder if someone was powerful enough magically, if they would be able to walk into the river and actually follow it to the underworld. That would be crazy and would be a really cool story. Moving on, we have the Jade Sea, which leads all the way to Lustria and Ulthuan. Yep, of course, this is the Eastern Ocean and does connect us as well to Nagaroth. Funny, leading all the way to Lustria and Ulthuan. Saying Ulthuan is kind of funny because to get to that almost implies that you could like sail straight and go to Ulthuan. That's not, it's true but not true at the same time. It can get you to Ulthuan, but it's a really, really long road. You have to go across the ocean until you reach the continents of Nagaroth and Lustria, and go south, and it go all the way around Lustria, and then you go north until you hit Ulthuan. However, there is actually a secret route that would allow you to get to Ulthuan much, much faster, where the Dark Elves discovered that there is an underground sea, an underground ocean that actually connects the Boiling Sea, which is the Eastern Ocean, or sorry, the Western Ocean off the coast of Nagaroth, all the way to those little lakes that most of the Dark Elf cities are situated on. Obviously, nobody else knows it's there other than the Dark Elves. It's very difficult to navigate because it's kind of a maze, the underground sea, and it's very, very dangerous because fish people. But if you were to follow that road, you would obviously arrive in the inner sea or all those like inner lakes and oceans that are adjacent to all of the Dark Elf cities, except for like two of them. So you would almost assuredly die horribly. But you know, for the Dark Elves, that's great. That's what allows them to attack Cathay so regularly. Ships rarely travel the dangerous northern routes. Obviously, they want to avoid the Dark Elves and any other problems there. Usually they usually hug the coast around the Straits of Nippon. So what they're saying is nobody goes this way. everybody goes this way. So everybody goes south and follows. You hug the coastline, and then you go through the Straits of Nippon, and then you pop out onto the proper ocean and go from there. I don't know what this landmass is right here. I'm trying to remember my maps, and I feel like this should not be here. I'm not sure what this is off the top of my head. Yeah, this ocean is supposed to be incredibly tumultuous and dangerous for many reasons. But moving on, home to human pirates, dark elf raiders, and aquatic monsters. Wonder who they could be talking about. But yes, the Jade Sea is obviously very dangerous for many reasons. There's a lot of human kingdoms between the dreaded Woe, who are humans, the dreaded Woe, Nippon, and of course, you know, rebellious Cathayan people. Lot of pirates. However, this is why it's regularly patrolled by the green-sailed Grand Dragon Fleet. And the Dragon Fleet is, of course, one of the largest navies in the world, which makes sense as the population of Cathay is absolutely colossal. So they would be able to have one of the largest fleets in the world, especially because they get attacked a lot from the ocean. Then we get some information about the Imperial Provinces over here, where we have like Kunlan, Mingzhu, the Forest of the Moon, and the Village of the Moon, which we know the Village of the Moon is very closely tied to the Moon Empress. And all they tell us is that it's the most powerful of all the regions, likely because it has access to everybody's goodies, other than the southern province, but who cares about the southern province? And it's the home of Weijin and the Dragon River. So obviously it has the capital city itself and the source of the Dragon River present in it, and also has places that are extremely special to Shenwu and his wife. Oh gosh, something Yin, Kuei Yin. Shenwu, or Shenwu, Shenyang. There we go. Shenyang and Kuei Yin have a lot of very important places to them personally within this territory. So it's, of course, it's very powerful. And then the last province we're going to be learning about today is the Eastern Provinces, which are ruled by the Sea Dragon, Yin Yin, the most impetuous and seemingly aggressive of the Dragon Children, who unfortunately has the massive mark of shame on her legacy of the time she tried to invade. She wanted to create a powerful colony on the Southlands to expand the power of Cathay and allow Cathay to become a global empire. But unfortunately for her, it did not go well because some of her army navigated west before they went kind of this way and went out to the western seas to invade the Southlands from the west, or the east rather, and then the rest of her army went east across the Jade Sea to invade the Southlands from the west. Unfortunately, although the Cathayans knew the planet was a globe, at that particular time they had not yet discovered that there was a continent between them and the old world, being Lustria. And also, to make matters worse, the Lustria looks exactly like the Southlands, unless you're looking at it from like a god's point of view. So they get to the western shore of Lustria and they try to invade eastwards thinking, oh, we'll meet up with the Eastern Army. There was no Eastern Army, because the army that went to invade the Southlands, the Slan foresaw it because they had a sacred plaque of the old ones warning them about it. So the Slan just conjured a typhoon that completely obliterated Yin Yin's fleet. And then the fleet that invaded Lustria did not ever run into their much larger eastern counterparts because they were on the wrong continent. And those poor bastards ended up fighting all the way across the continent and barely made it. Very few of them made it to the eastern shore, where they realized this isn't the Southlands. This is a totally different continent. And so they eventually sailed for home, and one guy made it home. A singular guy from both fleets made it home and reported he won many accolades and was a hero because he had discovered Lustria and brought back with him a lot of information. But I imagine it was a huge disgrace for Yin Yin to get her fleet absolutely obliterated in what ended up being a mostly completely fruitless endeavor. But that's how it goes. We know this is the second wealthiest region in the empire, and it's actually quite large. I think it's actually like it seems the largest of the provinces, to be honest. But we can see it's literally the entire coastline with a very, very tiny exception down here below Shiwu. But it has a ton of cities and ports. They have Haishai, Beishai, Chimai, Fuchao, Lizu, and Shiwu. Like, that's just so many cities, and these are like great cosmopolitan grand cities, the most important of which being Fuchao, which is a super duper giant colossal trading port. And this is where a lot of people live from other nations. So when we spoke to Andy Hall, we learned that like there are high elves that live here. There are people from the Empire, Talea, Estalia, Araby. The people from all over the world are allowed to live within these cities. So they have notable like quarters that are belong to immigrants and such. So they have like these grand cosmopolitan feels and lots of different cultures mixing together. Probably like if I was teleported into Warhammer World, these would be like very, very high on places I would want to visit. Yeah, super famous. And they are, of course, guarded very heavily by the Dragon Fleet, which most notably protects against the predations of the Dark Elf Raiders and also defends against rival nations, most notably the Kingdom of Nippon, which this is, of course, really cool. Nippon is on this map. I don't think that means anything. I think Nathan did a video about this, and I didn't watch it, to be fair, but I from the way he did the title and the thumbnail, it seemed to be much more focused on Nippon than anything else, which I think is honestly kind of the weakest thing to take away from this map. Like, yeah, Nippon is there, who cares? Whether or not we get Nippon, I think is still a pretty heavy toss-up, because it is such a tiny kingdom, and very specifically focused around such a small amount of space in a relatively tiny empire. Do I ever think we'll get Nippon? I think it depends. If the game does exceptionally well, which will, I think, depend on the launch of Mortal Empires more than anything else. Once we go to Mortal Empires, I do think the map that leaked, the map that we found in the game files, is accurate to what they're going to do. And on that map, there is no Nippon. Now, do I think that means that Nippon will never happen? No, I just don't think it's in the current original plan. But, we all should remember how in Warhammer 2, our Mortal Empires was much, much smaller than the Mortal Empires we ended with. They added in the entire eastern edge of the World's Edge Mountains. We got the entire coastline around the Sour Sea and the Dragon Isles. And we also got a notable portion of the Darklands added, in addition to, we got new regions in the ocean, like the Galleon's Graveyard. So if they decide, like, the game's doing great, they're like, hell, let's throw in Nippon. They could very easily add in Nippon. It's a fairly small amount of space. They would just have to, develop a really cool, unique race to live there. So if anything, I think it's actually better that we don't have Nippon at the start. I would rather Nippon show up once it's been fully developed and they have a DLC ready for it, rather than it just being tacked on. At least that's just me personally. But because why add it to the map and then have it just be like Fog of War out, or just like Cathay armies live there until they add it in? I think it's better to just leave it off the map, and then, because you don't need it there. But I do hope we get the Dreaded Woe and Nippon eventually. If I remember right, I believe the Dreaded Woe are a chaos themed faction, kind of like Norska. So I'm not 100. I think they're the Norska of the East, essentially, in that they have like an actual nation and are not just roving around constantly like the Kurgan or the Hung. But I'd have to double check that. So don't take that 100%. But yeah, this map is beautiful. There's tons of wonderful information. I've been rambling here for almost an hour. Jesus Christ. Okay, we got to wrap this up. But yeah, let me know what y'all think. And then the last thing we're going to look at is this last little guy. This is actually from an artist by the name of Tony Sart. Tony Sart, hopefully I said that right. And here we can see the Gate Master. So the Gate Master looks to be a general, or a I forget what they're called off the top of my head. The whatever the Cathay general is, the basic lord. But you'll notice he has a fairly different appearance, and he actually has a sword and shield design. So he's a sword and board character. I would be willing to bet a good amount of money that this guy was planned to be a unique lord that could only defend and be present in the Great Bastion. So like if I was really wanting to be a betting man, I would bet that there was originally a feature, kind of, you know how like the Kislevite Adamans, where you could assign Adamans to provinces and they get level ups and bonuses and abilities depending on as they like level up and acquire new abilities and stuff. I bet that's what this guy was. I bet it was originally intended that when you took over one of the gates, if you're playing as Cathay, you could recruit a gate master who would acquire unique skills and abilities, or skills and traits, as he controls the Great Bastion, and he would basically be like a unique garrison lord. In which case, I will say I love that idea, and I really hope we get this guy in the future. I would absolutely love to have a unique sword and board lord that is just part of the garrison, and he upgrades like the longer you hold that part, because that would make holding the Great Bastion so much more interesting if you had a unique character there who's slowly leveling up the longer he holds it and the more battles he fights, and he has access to like a unique skill tree and has traits that he like, you get dilemmas like, oh, the gate's going through this kind of issue, what are you going to do about it? Or hey, the gate's having this kind of problem, what are you going to do about it? And he gets, you know, different traits and abilities depending on what options you pick, and that would make losing a section of the wall so much more painful, which would be a good thing. Like, it would make you so much more invested in it, because not only are you upgrading the wall so the garrison gets stronger and it's more resistant to falling and everything, but now you have this character you're investing in, and you're like, damn, I don't want this guy to die because I've invested a lot into him, and he lives as long as the wall lives. Like, if you fail and the wall falls, he dies. Like, I don't even think he should have the chance to be immortal. It's just that's your punishment, is not only did the wall fall and now you've got enemies pouring through, but you lost your gate master. I think that would be so cool, and I would love to have gate masters for each of the 3 gates who you get to control, because it would just make me care more. Like right now, I don't really give a crap if I own the Great Bastion. Like, I just don't care. Even when I'm playing Miao Ying, I don't find myself caring if I own all 3 sections of the wall, because the AI can usually handle one section just fine. It's like, all right, that's just a part of the wall I don't have to deal with, because it could be annoying when you're the only one dealing with it, because you're constantly having to like send an army to help reinforce, and you gotta babysit it. It's just like, whatever. If it had a unique character who was also sitting on it that was developing, now you got my attention. So please, CA, give us these gate masters back. I think that'd be great. Thank you all so much for watching. That's gonna be the end of today's video. This is all the stuff I found. I will have a link to the Reddit thread in the comment section below, or the description, one of them, where you can find all of this for yourself and check it out, and also upvote and whatever. So let me know what you think down in the description. What thing are you the most excited about potentially from this? Yes, you could say Nippon if you must, but if your takeaway from this is Nippon, I feel like you wasted your time with this video. But let me know what thing you're the most excited about potentially getting in the future from this. Are you most excited about like a gate master? Are you most excited about the southern province? Are you most excited about the eastern province? Are you the most excited about the Jade Dragon maybe? Let me know what you think, and yeah, thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're enjoying the content, and I hope the audio is better. I am, like I said a few videos ago, I'm so stupid when it comes to audio, and I just got this new system, so I'm learning as I'm going, and hopefully this sounds better than the last video, and that continues to be the case. Thank you all again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.